so far out of my comfort zone with this topic this morning that is not even in the book that we've been referencing all quarter long. But it should be interesting because it's something I think that's very important for us to consider in our everyday walk of life, because it's going to be impacting us in whether we want it to or not. Are there any things we should mention in our prayer this morning before we begin? Let's bow in prayer. Father in heaven, we're thankful for this morning, the opportunity to be together, to study your word, to consider how culture influences the people of God and how we should reach out to people who are influenced by culture. We're thankful for the opportunity to consider your word in our lives in all things. We pray that you will put your word first in the things that we do, say, and think. We're mindful of the Livering family, and we pray that you'll bless Earl and Dolores and the loss this week, and pray that you will help us to encourage them. And we're thankful we have a church family we can lean on in difficult times and situations. We are mindful of the challenges that the church faces with growth, and pray that you will bless the growth efforts here, and that the decisions that are being made to help extend the avenue of growth at this congregation so that it will flourish. We'll pray that the decisions are mindful of the hearts of the Christians here, and that it encourages and uplifts each of us as we move forward in our walk with you. Pray that you'll bless us in all things in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, so as you can see, our topic this morning, our subtopic this morning within the topic of culture is artificial intelligence. I don't know a lot about artificial intelligence, but I learned quite a few things relative to this class. I can say that I spent about 20 years in the tech industry building computer processors that were eventually getting to this point to support artificial intelligence. So I'm not completely unaware of where this has been going for a long time, but it is in our environment today, and it is something that we should talk about. I will say that where it's intended to go, most likely we'll never get there. That's just my opinion. But there's a lot of efforts being made to push this technology into every avenue of human innovation that you can imagine. So why are we discussing this? So it'll become apparent during discussion. And I asked myself that as well. Should we be discussing this? This is something that we need to discuss. And I can tell you that it is something that is going to be as pervasive as the internet itself. And so many of you may have been around when the internet was first coming out, and if you had children during that time, you may have been concerned about the content and the situations that were being created with the internet. But you also saw a lot of the opportunities that the internet provided to disseminate information that could be useful in the lives of citizens around the world. So a significant cultural impact is expected. That's a primary reason why we're talking about that this morning. And so just like with any technology, it will amplify the good and the bad. So we have to be aware of that. We have to understand that the spiritual forces will use these things as well in order to disseminate information that would be challenging for Christians. It's extremely difficult to manage, especially today. We're forging ahead into artificial intelligence, and we don't really know what we're doing half the time, to be perfectly frank about the conversation. So you need to be aware of that whenever you're using this technology, or when your children may be using it. As men, we need to be able to lead our families, and we need to understand the risks that are involved with the situation. And I can tell you that artificial intelligence can only be limited by a power button, essentially. Maybe you can find some things in your house that aren't influenced by artificial intelligence at this time, but give it a few years and everything that you power on will have artificial intelligence embedded into it. So is it impossible to define? I would say practically yes. I can't tell you exactly what artificial intelligence is because I don't think artificial intelligence creators know what it is quite at this time. So, but the general definition is that it's the capability of computational systems to perform tasks typically associated with human intelligence, such as learning, reasoning, problem solving, perception, and decision making. And we'll go into some of those conversations this morning on a very, very high level. This answer, I asked AI what it was, and it told me this answer. So it's this is kind of an excerpt from that. And just so you know, they've dropped the 2 periods in the acronym AI. It's now just AI, no periods. If your name is Al, it's going to be very confusing. But that's the situation as it is now. So I'll tend to convert a little bit as we go through the slide. So here are examples of artificial intelligence, just so you know kind of where we're at today in terms of artificial intelligence. They're automating manufacturing systems. You've got your self-driving cars that use artificial intelligence. Not all of them and not all the elements, but certainly that's being more and more integrated into cars. A really big use of AI right now is chatbots. And so you're probably all used to using an internet search engine or a browser search engine. And that's essentially what some of these chatbots are. They are browser enhancements. If you do a search, you'll find content that's more applicable to the search you're trying to do potentially, or quite frankly, it could be something completely different than what you were intending. That's where we're at with artificial intelligence and chatbots today. Also, these chatbots, they help automate certain tasks. Like if you're a job applicant today, you might be putting your resume and your information into a field that's managed by a chatbot. So it helps that process along of your job application essentially. There's a lot of uses for chatbots. They're using it in the medical field and travel might be one of those areas where artificial intelligence is used. So I'm not going to go into detail of all the types of artificial intelligence that exist, but I do want to highlight a few things just so we're trying to be comprehensive here and understanding where we're at in the scheme of things. So they have a capabilities-based description of AI or artificial intelligence. It's narrow AI or weak AI. And then there's general AI or strong AI. And then super AI or super intelligent AI. And then they're also broken down by functionality. Reactive machines, that tends to be termed basic AI. And then we have limited memory AI, theory of mind AI, and self-aware or theoretical AI. And by the way, just because it says it's theoretical AI, I think some of these other ones are theoretical as well. But essentially, that's how they're framing the discussion in contemporary literature. So the narrow AI, you see that in your Siri or Alexa you might be familiar with, or your self-driving car features. So that's where you encounter the narrow AI or the weak AI. And then reactive machines, you can think of the computer chess. You know, for many years we were putting the computer up against some of the greatest chess players in the world, and every year the great chess players would always defeat the computer. And it was a number of years ago where for the first time ever this computer chess player actually defeated a world-class chess champion. So we've the intelligence has definitely increased over time, and that's the reactive machine AI. And then the limited memory AI is really where we're at today with some of the biggest features. We have the car autopilot and virtual assistants. But then we have the chatbots and generative AI. And the chatbots and generative AI are what we're going to talk about most this morning, simply because that's where you're going to find yourself encountering this artificial intelligence. So I asked AI again about the AI and culture. And this is just a browser. This is a browser chatbot that I was asking. And it says, artificial intelligence is significantly influencing culture. I kind of knew that. That's why I was asking about it. And then if you go down further, it says the technologies are reshaping cultural norms, values, and practices by enabling new forms of content creation, influencing media consumption, accelerating cultural transmission. It says they also pose risks related to bias, misinformation, and erosion of cultural diversity if not carefully managed. And of course, then whenever you're looking at these things, you're asking, well, who is managing this? Who are the content managers? Quite frankly, there's not a lot of management going on. And there's an old saying in computer technology, and maybe all of you are familiar with it, but it really factors in here today, and it's garbage in, garbage out. That's something that has held true since the beginning of computers, and it will hold true to the end of computers. Garbage in, garbage out. So whenever it's talking about influencing culture and influencing media consumption, we have to be concerned about the garbage that's going in context of the garbage that we're going to get out of it. Generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Midjourney, and Google Maps are shaping cultural perceptions. So it's changing the perception of culture. Sometimes it's reinforcing commercial, architectural, and social biases. Of course, there's going to be a big thing in advertising. It's going to be leveraged very heavily in advertising. Not only is it going to be sending you information that it thinks you need to know about the commercial environment, it's also going to collect information from you so that it can understand the way that you perceive the branding initiatives that they have going on, and it will respond accordingly to try to further influence your ideas of these commercial brands. It will reinforce the social biases, often representing a narrow, curated view of cultural context that can exacerbate segregation and power imbalances. That's a bit of a political statement, but it's also, I believe, really true. It can create further division where division exists, and it can create situations that it has a higher level of influence over what kind of content you're asking for and being delivered to you. So the outputs can perpetuate existing stereotypes and cultural barriers. So as if we don't have enough of these stereotypes and cultural barriers today, that's kind of how it works. It will further enhance that. And it says the cultural alignment is a critical factor. So for artificial intelligence to be highly effective, you have to get in line with its thinking, or you have to be in line with the thinking of the creators of this particular AI content, or you have to have accepted the fact that this AI content is particularly relative to you and you're going to engage with it on that level. And so when we think about that, we have to know that when we're dealing with artificial intelligence or any kind of these AI chatbots or any other AI technology, that it is trying to deliver something to us that it believes that we want, and or it is something that somebody else wants us to want or wants us to be involved with. So you have to bear in mind when you're talking about these AI form factors of today that you are indeed an important active participant in the process. So as I said, the two main topics for today are the AI chatbots. They're integrated into web browsers or computer OSs. They're now selling computers that you buy. It's part of the branding. Here's an AI computer, buy it, you know. And okay, what does that mean? Well, it means what they want it to mean. That's all it means. Okay. So if you're thinking you're getting some fancy computer with this, I don't know exactly what they're going. It'll be catered to you. As you use it, it will learn about you and respond to your desires and needs, so to speak. Certain applications, like I don't know if you've used the Microsoft products lately, but I have to fight AI all the time on my slides. I don't know how to turn it off exactly, but it shifts things around and it thinks it's being helpful, but I like things a certain way, and so it's problematic for me. And then web services, they have virtual assistants, something that you might come across if you're doing a website. The chatbot will say, well, hello, I'm Violet. How can I help you? And it expects you to type in, or you can even have your microphone and you can talk to it. You know, it'll respond to your voice. And then there's generative AI. It has limited deployment capabilities and it requires significant computational power. But it's very controversial in that its whole intent is to create content. And so we'll talk about that some more. And by the way, if you have any input whatsoever on any of these topics, feel free to speak up because I understand this is not typical for our Bible classes, but we're certainly getting there. So it can be a useful tool. It's I know some people typically use it to summarize key points of literature and leverage that information to create their own information about the literature. It can identify relevant data more quickly, potentially, and it can accomplish small tasks. You can tell it to do something, and it will go off and do that quite possibly, if you're not too aggressive in what you're asking it to do at this point. Samuel. Yeah, so there are some efforts to have AI, replace or augment the workforce environment, and the success of that is marginal at best. But however, I can tell you with technology, every time it says it's going to take jobs, well, it's going to take more jobs to work with the jobs that are created in the technology. That's generally how it works, and so we're going to talk this morning about the difficulty of managing artificial intelligence. So it's going to require a lot of artificial intelligence managers, if you will, or content guiders and all kinds of things. So it's just like every other technological advancement. The technology comes in and says, okay, this is going to replace workers, and generally it creates an environment where more workers are required. So then, yes. Right. Yes. Absolutely, and I really appreciate that. I have that passage listed in the slides here, so I'm excited, Drew, that we're at least one of us are on the same wavelength here. So I appreciate that feedback. And yes, so what you're wanting to hear, it will tell you. What it thinks you need to hear, it will tell you. What somebody else wants you to hear, it will tell you. And so it's a self-reinforcing mechanism, and as Drew said, it's trying to take complex thoughts and narrow it down to very simplistic nature, which is, I don't know, if you think about it, what they're trying to do, they say human thought and reasoning, that's complete nonsense. But it's offensive. It's quite frankly offensive that they're saying that computers to be trying to be human in its reasoning. Right. That's right. That's right. So it leads into this passage here, and it says, Ecclesiastes 1:9, what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. So there's nothing new under the sun. So how does this apply in this context, would you say? So Drew kind of alluded to some of that. What else can you think of? That's right. We've been self-selecting for, I like that. We've been self-selecting for the entirety of humanity. And we've been creating tools that will get us information faster. We've been doing these things that will allow us to communicate better to people who are far away. And so it's a building block of things that we've been doing all along. I can also say that it might be another term we could use as another idol. If we think we don't have idols in our society today, we're probably deluding ourselves to some extent. And if we really understand what idols are, we understand it. Now, I will tell you that what I'm talking about this morning is that this goes to another level of potential idol worship than what we've seen in past technologies. It's hard to believe, but I think that's true. Yes, sir. That's right. That's right. So I like that. So, and this technology, just like any technology, we can use it to spread the gospel. We can free up time in our lives to go and do the work of spreading the gospel. There's a lot of ways we could use it that would be beneficial. Yet we find that men find ways to do something with it other than what's really good for the Christian man and his family. Right. And what you said about it reinforcing the ideas that you already have, we have some we have some stories in contemporary news that tells us that that's the case, and it can be tragic in certain situations. So as far as idols go, some will revere, praise it. They make it their focus. They seek guidance from it. And, the Bible talks about it. Why are you bowing down and asking information from a piece of wood? But the fact of the matter is, they do it, and they even sacrifice to it, and many other things. So let's take a look at Psalm chapter 115, and within the context of our discussion here this morning, understand what might apply to us. Psalm chapter 115, and I'll read verses 4 through 8. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of human hands. They have mouths, but they cannot speak. They have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. They have noses, but they cannot smell. They have hands, but they cannot feel. They have feet, but they cannot walk. They cannot make a sound with their throat. Those who make them will become like them. So it's essentially saying, these idols can do nothing, but it is a reflection of who we are, and we become like the thing that we're creating. And so the key points here: silver and gold, it's the handiwork of man, these idols. They're great. Their mouths and throats without speech, eyes without sight, ears without hearing, noses without smelling, hands without feeling, and feet without walking. Does that describe artificial intelligence today, as what we've talked about so far? Trying to get it to speak, aren't they? Trying to get this thing to speak. We want more out of we want a fancier idol, if you will. We want an animated imitation, is what we're looking at. But don't get confused. It's still the handiwork of man. And so men are creating this thing, and as I read through Scripture, I can get a sense of a lot of things that how God would view this, how we should view this, how we should understand this. Again, it's a nuanced discussion to have, because there's a lot of ways we could use these things to glorify God. But there are a lot of ways, probably many more ways, that we could leverage it to glorify man. And so when we do this, we tend to have a backward effect to it. So in terms of AI being similar or different, it's really just the same thing. It's what are we thinking about, what we want to know about, who do we want to become, is a reflection of the idols we create. I'm not saying that AI is completely an idol, but I think we need to view it in those terms to understand it, such that we are careful into how we engage with this technology. So I asked the browser chatbot, and I did a few experiments, so this is just one of them. I asked, what are the benefits of AI? So it included in its response, AI is increasingly used for personal well-being with digital companions, helping reduce loneliness and providing emotional and mental health support, especially for teenagers and older adults. So if you have children, I want you to pay attention to this. The web browsers that they normally use, even if you have your controls and everything, they want to be there for your child. They want to be a support system for your child, potentially. And your child may want that from them. And as Drew said earlier, it reinforces what you want to hear. That's what these chatbots do. They reinforce what you want to hear. They deliver content to you that you want to see or hear or experience in some way. And so that is very important for us to realize. And I put danger here, and the reason I say this is because the American Psychological Association, in an open letter to the FCC on December 20th, 2024, expressed grave concerns about chatbots that purport to serve as companions or therapists, citing situations in which serious psychological harm is being done, up to including death by suicide as a result of AI interactions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very concerning. And whenever my kids were growing up, they had the Tamagotchi. I don't know if some of you have heard of it, but it was a little tiny computer pet, if you will. You would put input to where you'd feed it and bathe it and that sort of thing, just taking care of your little pet. That sounds very similar, except for it's now on steroids, right? It's a whole different thing. It wants to be your friend, not your pet. It wants to be your friend, which means, friend, you have this cordial interaction with it. You talk about things and you can find justification, as Drew said, for about anything you want, once you're interacting with it in a certain way. But, so this friends, according to this, unless I looked and I didn't see anything updated from the American Psychological Association, but something like friends sounds very dangerous. It sounds like something you should not have hanging around your child's neck. I'm telling you this because these things are highly influential in a person's life. And so we need to be wise about these things. Yes, addictive is a good term to consider here. And by the way, you said, they turn to them because they feel isolated. And especially as children growing up in a Christian home, they're going to feel different from those around them. Because we're telling our children not to be just like the world, right? We're telling them you have to be different. So imagine having a friend that you can take with you anywhere you go and can align to your worldview, rather than to the worldview of those who reject you. So for Christians, that's particularly something that we should pay attention to. So there's AI personification. I'm completely offended by the personification aspect of this. Like, why, if I'm applying for a job, am I talking to a chatbot called Violet? Why isn't it just the tool? Why isn't the chatbot that will process the resume or what have you? So that's very concerning to me. Why are they putting the personality behind the chatbot, which are just a computer? And as we said, friends or whatever else we have out there, it's for companionship. It's getting into counseling. There are, again, let's go back. So the American Psychological Association says they have grave concerns about companions or therapists, but that's exactly what we're doing today. We're having counselors, and I can tell you, they're also pastors. And where does that go? That also creates gods and religions. I'm not saying that we're going to go down that path here, anybody in this room, but that's the culture and the society we're going to be dealing with. We're going to encounter some people who are part of the church that was created by their AI. Absolutely. So when when my kids were growing up, I did an internet test, and I found out that from the most benign website that I could find, If I clicked on 3 links, I could very easily get the content I didn't want my children anywhere near. All it took was 3 clicks to get to that content. And I can tell you, this is probably beyond that, and we are in the wild west of artificial intelligence right now. So if you think you've got a good handle on it, I want you to be very cautious and say, maybe I don't. Preach. Yeah. Yeah, and you don't have to go anywhere to get this. Uh, I'm so now you get based on the conversation, I know you're on the same wavelength of what we're talking about. So I'm going to probably go through some of this content a little more quickly because I don't like talking about it, but also I think you're getting the gist of it. Yeah. Well, and I can tell you that you're not getting, if you're using the internet browser search engine or even AI, you're not getting what you really want. You're getting what someone else wants you to have. And so that's important for us to remember. So we have these religious tools that are for AI, and it's with good intentions. They're creating AI tools that are for, religious bodies. And I can tell you that they are advertising that they're going to support your denomination, whatever it might be. They're going to curate the content for your, specific religion. So it'll reinforce stereotypes of your denomination. It'll select passages within the religious domain. So if you have a question about a topic, it will stick to a topic of kind of stereotypical responses that are consistent with your religion or your faith system. So just be aware of that. What's the problem with that, Daniel? That's right. So you should be, when you're reading scriptures, you should be challenging yourself to see if you understand it, not just reinforcing the idea that someone else has for you on that. That's really important. And also in Acts chapter 17, verses 10 through 12, let's take a look at that quickly. And so it says, the brothers immediately sent Paul and Silas away by night to Berea, and when they arrived, they went to the synagogue of the Jews. Now these people were more noble-minded than those in Thessalonica, for they received the word with great eagerness, examining the scriptures daily to see whether these things were so. So we know that story. We know that they're challenging themselves. Who do you think are creating these AI religious tools? Is it the Thessalonians or the Bereans? It's the people who are interested in the comfort zone. It's the people who, it's a product, so you gotta make sure that you're staying within that domain. And so we're reinforcing stereotypes with these things. And I'm not saying that you can't use them and, it might not be valuable to you. I'm saying that you have to be careful in context. Let's turn to 2 Timothy 2:14. Samuel. I, I agree, and actually some of my favorite Bible references are going to include artificial intelligence and help me work with phraseology or even the Greek language, give me more information about that, or the Hebrew, and I'm going to learn more about it. So I'm kind of excited about that. However, I have to understand too, it's still very limited, and it's not going to replace my study. And so it says that we need to actively handle the word of truth in 2 Timothy 2:14 through 17a. And we need to avoid worldly and empty chatter. And as Drew said earlier in 2 Timothy 4:3, we accumulate these teachers or this information that's to our own desires, our own information. So AI tools in general are subject to data manipulation. They tend to scour internet for what is mainstream rather than what is critically curated and scrutinized. So if you got a research journal and it's doing that, looking at that, and if it's just a normal website, it doesn't take into account the authorship or anything. It doesn't have a critical view to the things that you want to examine. It just is not there today, and you have to still make those judgment calls. And it often relies upon unfortunate data sources for its information. So there's another way to spell idle, and so that probably applies here as well. And that's in distraction from important endeavors. We can get very caught up in it. It's more captivating than current electronics potentially. It steals time from important interactions, as was mentioned. When you got somebody hanging around your neck, why don't you talk to them instead of real engagement. And then the morality of the content is a very serious concern. So generative AI creates content, music, voice, and video. It's a content creator. It's something that your child or you or your family could do relatively easily. This type of content has no limits. They say they do, but if you're creative like a smart 10-year-old or a typical 12-year-old, you're probably finding ways around any kind of limits that are there. And the length of content is limited by application machine time. Content can be saved or it can be eliminated after use. So you kind of make this content and there's no trace of it when you're done with it. It just dissipates. So during this past week, a local man was arrested for the first time for use of this kind of tool. Now, if it can be created to use illegal content, it can be created to use almost any kind of content, particularly content that you would not want your children or your family to be associated with. Some experts say that reputable AI models have guardrails. Others indicate AI is difficult to manage. And I can tell you that, let me tell you a quick story. So I was looking for a topic on this, and it wasn't responding the way I was expecting it to. And it was talking about something else that was totally unrelated to the article that I was interested in evaluating. And I said, okay, I asked the chatbot, I said, does this word that you're talking about occur anywhere within this? And it said, no, but I'm using content from elsewhere to interpret it. And it was just wrong. So then I asked it other questions. I said, well, how does this apply to this context then? And then it said, well, it really doesn't. And by the time the conversation was over with the chatbot, I had the chatbot doing exactly what I believed should be done. So it was learning from me at least within the browser. Now, I turned off my computer and came back on, and it was dumb again, which is kind of nice. But the reality of it is, you not only can it talk you into something, you can talk it into something, and you can get that reinforcing feedback that we were talking about earlier. You get what you want out of it. And that's all the time we have this morning, but we'll pick up just a couple more things next week, and then we'll go into kind of the pop culture content and the media and the environment.